This was simultaneously the most beautiful and the hardest time in my life. This is not a tips and advice video, nor is it a success story. It's just a real one. Just as you may have previously seen in my video about postpartum weight loss, if you haven't, make sure you check it out after you watch this one. This video is meant to be relatable so that you feel hopefully seen and heard, and so that you can know that you are not alone in the situation that you are either currently going through or the situation that you did go through. If anything I say here you do find helpful and you would like to try, just do so at your own discretion. Remember that I am not a healthcare professional. I am just someone who did in fact survive the newborn stage alone. Full transparency, I was not completely alone during the entire newborn stage. I was alone for, I want to say, about 2 weeks. And then my son's father did live with us for a little while before moving out when my son was 4 months old. Frankly, even when my son's dad was living here, I still got a lot of good practice in being a single parent. And I think that is something that many of you can relate to and know exactly what I am talking about. But I still wanted to acknowledge that I understand it is still not the same as somebody who has been through the whole newborn stage completely alone. When I think back to this time in my life, the first thing that comes to mind as far as how I felt is isolated. The second word is vulnerable. I really felt like I was caught in a baby vortex, and in a lot of ways I was. I was a first-time mom. I was incredibly scared. Everything was brand new to me, and I had my son's precious life in my hands. His well-being, his happiness, his sleep, his alimentation was all dependent on me. I remember feeling like I wanted so bad to have company for anyone to come and visit me so that I could have contact with an adult and not a baby. Unfortunately, I wouldn't receive any visitors for a long time, and even then, there were not many who came around. It felt like every single day was Groundhog Day. Every day was the same as the day before. Feedings every 2.5 hours, burping, cleaning, changing another diaper. I also experienced a lot of challenges with breastfeeding. I remember many times holding my son in one arm and trying to pump with the other. Anytime I put my son down to do anything, whether it was to go to the bathroom, get something to drink, try and fix myself something to eat, he would get upset and, oh, look, it's time to feed again. My son was also not a good napper. He would nod off for about 30 minutes to an hour at a time, and then he was up again and ready for food and attention and love. And of course, I do have to say that none of this is his fault, that all of this is very much expected. But when you're going through this alone, it is incredibly overwhelming, and I really felt like a robot that could not even just take a moment to pause or shut down. I didn't have any time for myself, and I remember getting very annoyed by hearing that type of advice, like sleep when the baby sleeps and make sure that you're taking care of yourself. It'll be okay if you just put him down for a moment while you go do something like eat or get a drink, go to the bathroom. I felt like my responsibility was to take care of my son, and it is my responsibility. Frankly, with everything that I was going through at that time, I didn't see how I could work in any time for myself. I remember sometimes not even getting anything to eat until 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I mentioned feeling vulnerable, and it's absolutely terrifying to be alone with a newborn. I'm very thankful that I live in a great area that is really safe. However, it did still cross my mind What would I do if somebody tried to enter my apartment at night? What would happen if I fell and hit my head when I was on my way to grab the baby during the day? What would I do if the place caught fire? These are all questions that ran through my head at the time and really did cause me a lot of anxiety. And while I'm sitting here today telling this story, I can understand how somebody would think, well, if your apartment catches fire, you grab your baby and you go, you call 911. But when you're in that situation, it just doesn't feel that simple. It was also a matter of who would help me, where would I go, how would I replace all of his necessary items if something like that were to occur. Even sitting here talking about it now, reliving the experience and where I was at that time emotionally, my heart is racing. It really is such an isolating and vulnerable experience to be alone with a newborn. If I were to go back and do it over again, I think that I would make myself a solid plan addressing these questions and these safety concerns in case they were to ever happen hypothetically. As far as handling the isolation goes, to be honest with you, I still feel very isolated. Not as much as I did when he was a newborn, but I still deal with feeling isolated. When my son was a newborn, my main company was music and the TV. I constantly either had music playing or the TV on. Even at night when we went to bed, I couldn't stand the sound of silence or the volume of my thoughts. During this time, I was also experiencing a great amount of conflict with my son's dad. I won't get into details, and I'm not really sure that I ever will, but I will say that he left me completely heartbroken, devastated, confused, and depressed, all while trying to manage the learning curve of being a new mom. On top of the isolation, the vulnerability, the heartbreak that I was feeling, I also had another all too familiar feeling that we parents know very well: guilt. I felt guilty for not being more excited that I was a new mom, and I felt guilty for co-sleeping, and I felt guilty for always having the TV on. I had wanted to be a mom and have a family for years. And I had created a vision of what I thought that would look like, and what I ended up living was the complete opposite of what I had dreamed of. I blamed myself for everything that was going on because I couldn't understand why my reality was so difficult. I couldn't understand why everything seemed to be falling apart around me. And so I blamed myself for it, and I assumed that everything must be going wrong because of me. And I was very ashamed of myself. I have already touched on this a little bit in another video that I did about losing friends as a single parent, but I did also wonder at that time, for those who did know about what was going on and were familiar with my situation, I had wondered why they didn't check in on me a little bit more. I had wondered why they didn't want to come over and visit. And because I couldn't figure out a reasonable answer, I just blamed myself. It has to be because of me. It's so easy to let your thoughts spiral, especially when you're alone with a newborn. And like I had mentioned earlier, not having any adult contact or adult conversation can really be devastating. You're alone with your thoughts, and you're alone with a baby who is completely dependent on you for everything. If I could go back and do anything differently during this time, I think that I would have journaled a lot more, either writing it out or recording audio as a way of journaling. Another resource that I really wish I had known about at that time, which I know this may be weird for some of you, but if I had known about ChatGPT during this stage of my life, I think that it would have helped me control those spiraling thoughts that I had. Although it is artificial intelligence, it's not a real friend or therapist. It is a place for you to put your thoughts and get back ideas, strategies, and validation when you are really struggling. I can tell you that during this time, I did not feel strong. Looking back on it 15 months later, I was actually the strongest that I have ever been in my life. And you are too. You are strong, you are resilient, and you will make it through this. Think of every other obstacle that you have faced in your life where you didn't think you would ever see light at the end of the tunnel until you did. If you are in this stage currently, or if you have been, you really need to know that you surviving is enough. Surviving is already an incredible accomplishment when you are doing this alone. You are pouring your heart and soul into taking care of another life. Meanwhile, there is no one to take care of you. One of my favorite quotes is by former President Theodore Roosevelt, who said, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena." While I may not have been a man in an arena, I was a woman in an apartment alone with a baby, and it was my strength that brought us to where we are today, and it will be the same for you. And when we hear it isn't the critic that counts, remember that you sometimes are the critic. Don't be so critical on yourself. Give yourself grace. That is going to be it for today's quick video. I really hope that this story of mine made you feel seen and that you connected with it. Even if you didn't, thank you for watching anyways and getting to the end of my video. If you're currently living alone with a newborn, or if you are majority alone with a newborn, know that you will make it out of this stage, and you will eventually come to find parenting to be so rewarding and so fulfilling if you do not already feel that way. If you liked this video, make sure you say so by giving it a thumbs up. Make sure that you subscribe so we can continue to hang out and share stories like this one. And I will see you in the next video.